Welcome to the DeFi podcast, where we attempt to imagine the future of crypto, because foresight is what makes great investors. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment. All statements made by hosts or guests are strictly beliefs or point of views and are not recommendations to buy, sell, or hold any security. Hosts or guests may hold certain securities discussed in this podcast.
So welcome to another episode. This week we are talking to Dylan from Yield Yak. Dylan is a marketing lead at Yield Yak. He's a crypto OG, and among other things, he has invested in the Ethereum ICO, so it's been around for a while. And Yield Yak is a yield boosting and optimizing protocol, DEX aggregator, and liquid staking provider. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome, Dylan. Excited to do this pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
So we thought we would start with the market. You have your finger on the pulse of like many products in the market. You guys run 4 products that are quite a bit, I would say, different from one another. I mean, everything in DeFi connects, but these are distinct things. So I'm very curious to see how does that inform your overall view of the current market of DeFi.
I mean, in terms of where the market is in Avalanche DeFi right now, I mean, we're definitely in a bear market. And I don't think that's just due to, where the prices are at. But I think you see that reflected in, activity and users and, enthusiasm in the communities and everything that comes with it. But I mean, I don't think it's all doom and gloom because, we just went through such a kind of compressed bull run. Well, it wasn't that compressed. It was a long bull run, but compressed in the sense of how much time it takes to build things. And realistically, for the innovation and development to catch up to the expectations of all the influx of new users, there was inevitably always going to be a bit of a mismatch there. And now we're seeing, really kind of reduced user activity. There's been like a huge pushback on all of the like superficial projects that had like unsustainable tokenomics, a lot of the spin-off projects which weren't really adding real value to the ecosystem. All those projects have died or are in the process of dying. Those communities are kind of they're shifting towards projects that are building more useful real-world tools, and that's all healthy, and we're seeing the projects that are sticking around, are now kind of getting a bit more of an opportunity to build without all of the white noise, without all the distractions of the bull run. Now, there's all sorts of challenges with that as well, because these aren't like most of these projects aren't traditional companies, and a lot of like the revenue streams have dried up to sustain them. Some projects have different structures with longer runways with whether that's because they did big raises through VCs, or old school ICOs, or they just have kind of pretty fat treasuries. But I mean, those are the market dynamics that are playing out now, like that mix of like how you're sustaining your project when these revenues have dried up. What are you focused on? What are you prioritizing now? And the good thing is that I think that, these projects are more able to prioritize the things that they think that the more technical people think are meaningful. Whereas, I think in the peak bull of last year, a lot of the focus was being put in many cases on really kind of frivolous stuff that was more to like, satiate, the community rather than build meaningful tools. The fact that like when marketing was like a thing, like people were like, well, when will you guys start marketing? It's like that was like part of your like arsenal. Like, well, imagine what the token will do when we start shilling it. It was like kind of insane. And Yield Yak, never really took part in that. That being said, we certainly benefited from like the hype of the L1 rotation trade to Avalanche. But yeah, it was always like, personally, I found it, I come from a marketing background, but it was very much like, I guess, a traditional marketing background rather than like what we were seeing like, a year ago. And I found it actually quite frustrating just because it felt so like, who was shouting the loudest, whereas, the products now are having to stand on their own And you're seeing that with like GMX is a good example of a product that is getting more attention in the bear market than they did in the bull, because it's actually kind of a really useful product that has like really unique and innovative solution that solves a real problem. Being able to trade perps decentralized, and the concept of GLP taking the other side of the trade is really interesting. And that's there. Basically, there's still been some lights in the darkness when you see kind of projects like that get their fair share and their fair due. But then you have other projects that are struggling, that have good intentions, that are trying to build, and that's maybe the trickier side, and that'll be interesting to see kind of how long these projects what their runway is, and what their path forward is if the market stays like this. But yeah, it's a long answer to your question.
I think that's very good. Do you see the builders on Avalanche? Would you characterize them differently than the builders on other chains?
I mean, I just the background I have is I've worked with quite a few Ethereum projects, and then obviously worked a lot with Vel projects on Avalanche. I'm not a developer myself, I'm not a technical person. I'm more of a DeFi degen, and always have been. I'd say the building community on Avalanche, it's strong. I think it needs to be a lot stronger. I think there still is a lack of new developers on Avalanche, in terms of it matching up to what it needs to be, and I think what we'd want it to look like. But for sure, there's a lot of stuff still being built that's interesting, and the developers that have come on board, especially now, I think are doing it for the right reasons, because they believe in the community, they believe in the tech, and Avalabs have built a lot of really, really good stuff here to build on, and a lot of people are still excited about subnets. I still think there's some kinks that need to be ironed out about the subnet validation structure, which I don't think that has really been, like, the working model hasn't yet been rolled out in terms of like incentives for validators and how that's going to work. But yeah, there's a lot of really good foundational pieces that are here, and that give a lot of kind of hope for the future and optimism still. And you see some projects still launching in the bear. Hubble's a good one. Hubble's a new decentralized perp exchange, like competitor to GMX, that's doing some interesting stuff. They've just kind of plowed through and launched, and it's a really kind of cool product that has a lot of potential. So that's really promising to see. And then, it's really telling, what are the projects that are still kind of plowing forward. And to be honest, there's not that many. Like, it's way less than, it's really been condensed. But that being said, I think that's the case everywhere. I don't think that's not unique to Avalanche. There's been a real, the crash was pretty brutal for a lot of people, and like all those frivolous projects have dried up. So yeah.
Hubble's an interesting one. I think they've launched without launching their protocol token, which is says a lot about the moment we're in. So, what to you are the most interesting developments going on in Avalanche DeFi at the moment?
In terms of kind of the things that I would say are pretty advanced compared to other L1s, and compared to Ethereum, the liquid staking stuff, I'd say we're ahead of the game in many ways. Obviously, for proof of stake, and Ethereum isn't for another 10 days, T-minus 10 days. But from a liquid staking perspective, we're pretty advanced, probably on par with a chain like Solana. We've replicated a lot of the foundational pieces of, Ethereum DeFi, with kind of our Curve equivalent in Platypus, our Uni equivalent in Trader Joe. I think it's a big piece that, the Uni V3 model will be coming to Trader Joe. I know that they've made a lot of changes and hopefully improvements on it, with what they're calling liquidity book. I think that's a big piece because liquidity has dried up so significantly on these chains. Probably what's not spoken about a lot is like the VC backing of some of these chains was just providing so much of the TVL and the liquidity. And, with the Three Arrows Capital failure or default, that's stripped a ton of liquidity from some of these L1 chains, and Avalanche certainly has to be one of the real kind of like losers there in the sense of losing TVL, and we've seen that with the TVL drying up. So all that to say is that having really efficient like capital efficiency across the chain, I think becomes a lot more important, and we're seeing some positive things there. Like I said, the Uni V3 model will be really important for Avalanche, and I think that's coming soon in the next few weeks. In terms of some other kind of exciting stuff, like Hubble's an exciting project for sure. There's all sorts of people rolling out new features. Degens insurance provider. They've just launched new protocol insurance stuff that we've been talking to. Moremoney continues to add features. Yield Yak still building. We're working on a bunch of stuff. There's still a lot of innovation in the works. I think it could be more, but I guess it's from an Avalanche perspective, it's more like there's been a huge kind of ripple effect, from the how the markets played out with UST and 3AC, and there's almost like an adjustment period. I would say we're in a bit of an adjustment period, like adjusting to that shift and the fact that liquidity will have to be a lot more capital efficient. That we can't just rely on like huge yields to drive TVL, and the products need to stand on their own. We're still kind of like, I guess, dealing with the aftermath of that. But still, the community's still strong. But all of the rotators and the capital mercenaries have all left for other chains or just left in general, just waiting it out. I guess it's a bit of like we're like getting through the hangover after New Year's Eve, but I think we're pretty far past it now.
Good. So looking forward, do you have any opinions on like what's missing in DeFi? Where are we going? What's the ecosystem going to look like over the next year, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, actually, one thing I should have mentioned about like what's being developed on Avalanche. There's a lot of like structured financial products type stuff being built. So I want to call out some of those other projects, like RoboVault is one. There's another one called BWS Labs. I think that they're going to be launching in the next couple months, that are building like more like epoch based, risk managed puts, calls, options, different strategies, more delta neutral stuff. RoboVault has a USDC delta neutral vault that I think's at about 8% APY. So there's more of these structured products. Colony are launching their Avalanche index that they're going to be pushing really hard. A piece of that will be your yield bearing with Yield Yak. That's another exciting new product coming out. So there is a lot coming out. I guess what I'm curious to see is what what I don't think is yet like clear to me as a DeFi, someone that's been in DeFi for, it hasn't been around for that long, but long enough, is the appetite for stuff like structured products, like how much people are going to want to take on the smart contract risks, the onboarding experience being a bit more different. It's a different type of user that's using DeFi than like are buying structured products from like HSBC and like JP Morgan. Like it's not, we're not talking about the same demographic here in many cases. The people that were buying like, Olympus DAO forks are probably not going to be like aping into a 8% delta neutral vault, right? Like, is the risk reward worth it there? Like, they're, 8% is just keeping up with inflation right now. So I guess like that's one like concern I would have of like the structured products. Like, is there enough demand for those structured products? Maybe there is, and maybe like institutional investment will be interested in those types of products, and that's where the TVL will come from, as opposed to kind of more degen users like myself. But yeah, that's like the question, because realistically, by playing around in DeFi right now, you're taking on more risk. Even if like the nobility of it is better than like buying some product from HSBC, it's definitely there's a higher barrier to entry for most users to set up MetaMask or Core Wallet and figure out how all this works. And if it's all for like, an 8% delta neutral vault, I'm not sure that like upside is big enough right now, but which is what a lot, I think, of people are kind of focused on in the bear market. But that being said, like that's just more like the 2 to 3 month outlook that I'm talking about, because obviously, I think things will recover. But yeah, anyway, I digress a bit.
Yeah, since I joined crypto, I've been waiting for more derivatives products because you look at TradFi and how big those markets are, and they're I guess big enough in crypto, but not in decentralized crypto. So I've been waiting for those projects and protocols to appear on decentralized, as decentralized protocols. And my question has been the same, right? Like, is the market there for it? And is the volatility going to be so high that you're going to have to price these products, in a way that doesn't really make sense? And then is the appetite, really going to be there to consume them? I think, after the sort of crash that we've just had, and everyone, I think a lot of people who were LPing have now sort of had a firsthand experience with IL, and so I do, there's this, I think, new need for delta neutral strategies which tie in with what I'm talking about. But it's a similar question, right? Like, is the market appetite there? And how does this play out? So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's like a reminder that we are still super early, and it's going to take like, unfortunately, the time horizon for a lot of this stuff is years and not months. But yeah, like most, like for example, like index products really haven't stuck yet in DeFi, like whatsoever. And it's like, well, why is that? Why not? Because like indexes are huge in in TradeFi, but I think the reason is just like, yeah, do you really want a bucket of 5 assets when like, one could rug and tank the whole thing? Like the volatility really changes it really changes like your risk appetite and the types of things you're looking for. And again, it's a different type of user, right? Like most of these users are people that have like been holding on to indexes, that was their parents. So yeah, I mean, I think it probably will come, but, right now it's not like there isn't that like same demand as there is in TradeFi.
My sort of gauge of the average user, let's say, in crypto is they need more exciting products. They need something that they think is going to do a 10x. But because looking at something like getting 5% on your stablecoins, while theoretically is a very good product, in crypto, when there's all of these crazy market swings and volatility all over the place, I think the community has a bit of maturing to do.
Yeah, no, people are in it for the upsides. It's why like most people in the last bull run, they weren't buying Bitcoin, right? They were buying SafeMoon, and hopefully they did that with their eyes open. But that's the reality, and I get it. They're it's easy for like Bitcoin maxis to be like, how can you buy anything but Bitcoin? Bitcoin is immutable. But the reality is like those Bitcoin maxis also did like a 2000x. Like these guys want their own version of that, like, and I understand that. So yeah, what is the next equivalent?
Well, not all of them, right? I think most of the adoption to Bitcoin came after went up past like 10,000. And even when it dropped from 20,000 down to like 3,000 or 4,000, people weren't buying there. They were buying back when it was at 14,000, breaking out, like getting close to the new all-time high. So
yeah, I guess my only point is that I think like the average user right now, you're right, they're looking for a 10x, right? And generally speaking, they're not buying Bitcoin if they're looking for a 10x. I'm not hating on Bitcoin, probably not buying Ethereum either. Like that's kind of the that's been the dynamic in the past year. But I mean, yeah,
I think these things are a good thing though, right? Because in every, so for example, all of the Dogecoins and Safe Moons and all these different things that people get into, some of them are going to make money, but most of them are going to get in late and they're going to just ride it down until they sell out of fear, or they're just going to hold it for like 2 or 3 years when it doesn't perform anything in the future. And if those people remain in crypto, then they're going to look at the more safe, sort of stable returns and assets, and then kind of, come back to reality and realize like, hey, getting into an LP is probably not so bad, especially if your IL is not gonna, bankrupt you.
Yeah, so they kind of it almost acts like an onboarding, like a user acquisition vehicle to get them into more legit projects.
I have to admit, we may be seeing this moment now. Like, it's possible that I feel like just, scrolling Twitter, people are coming back down to earth, and they're just like going like, we were unexcited by 20% returns on stablecoins not long ago, right? And now I think 10% is pretty exciting, if there's no risk. So maybe the market is maturing. I mean, that's sort of my personal hope. I don't know if that's optimistic.
Yeah, it's funny. Like in our community recently, like there's people like, we need more utility for Yak. Like we need to do, we need more thing. We need the price to go up. And the reply is like, well, like if you own Yak, you just get 70% of our revenue. Like 70%. I don't think anyone. And they were like, oh, okay, I guess that is good utility. Like that's mostly the best utility that you can have for tokens right now is like generate real revenue and distribute that revenue to your token holders. Which is most of the model, which is how most protocols. The model that most protocols are moving towards now, right? You see Joe trying to shut down all emissions. GMX had ESGMX to bootstrap adoption, but they're phasing that out pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a maturation happening in all these projects, like approach to bootstrapping users.
Hey, Dylan, thanks a lot for all your insights, and it's been great having you. We're going to do a follow-up show on Yield Yak and all the specific products next week, and until then, thanks a lot. If you're still watching up to here, please follow us on all the places. It makes Jared very happy. All right, thanks a lot, guys. See you next week.